the favorite topic, I think, of everyone at the moment in all industries, AI, but we specifically want to talk about some success stories in product management and also how teams are adapting and excelling during this time. So we had a really good prep call early in the weeks, and there's some nice examples that our panel is going to share with you. All right, so yep, I see we have a good bit of people in, so I'm just going to get started. Just some housekeeping. As you know, with all webinars, you're allowed to ask questions. So as we're sharing examples, please drop your questions in the Q&A, and we'll leave like 10 minutes at the end to answer your questions that you have. Okay, so of course, before we dive into the topic, we want to meet our panel, and I'm excited to have our experts. So Jason, if you want to start off with introducing yourself, and then we could go down the line or mix it up.
I get the short straw. So so hi everyone, I'm Jason Knight. I'm a consultant, so I'm a product manager consultant, work with a bunch of different B2B and B2B2C companies, trying to help them up-level their product management game and make sure they're delivering the most exceptional outcomes for their customers as they can. I also do a lot of content work on the side, so podcasts that I've got going on, and newsletters and LinkedIn and memes and all these other things that I do to try and just keep people thinking about the conversation and talking about stuff together. So yeah, great to be here, and great to be here with everyone.
Great, I'll go next. I'm Ian Baxter. I'm a founder and CTO of Swarming Technology. I've been working in the e-commerce space for now just over 25 years. It's a long time in the world of technology. Yeah, really focusing on helping merchants, create exceptional experiences online, both B2B and B2C. Yeah, everything from the actual construction of the website through all integrations and everything that comes with that. So excited to be here.
Awesome, thanks.
Awesome, and my name is Germain Krystowiak. I am Chief Marketing Officer at Swarming. My role at Swarming is really to bridge the gap between the development team and our clients and the e-commerce team, and making sure that we're thinking through websites in both a marketing and analytics perspective. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome, thank you all. And yeah, so let's go into a few things. On our prep call, we were diving into some of our favorite stories, and we're also just talking about that, everyone is talking about AI, so why is that? And just some few stats from last year's report about this market right now that we're in. It's that, as you see, the first point here, it has its potential to grow pretty massive but in the next couple of years. So there is a lot of opportunity, and it's probably one of the reasons why so many new technologies are coming out, and people are just trying to enter and to capitalize on it. But then on the other hand, what we've been noticing over the last months, you would say, or each day, there is some concern about misinformation. People are feeling that. So this particular survey, about 75% of consumers are concerned about misinformation, was surveyed in the US by Forbes. But I also feel like we all had those discussions that we'll get into what this misinformation means and how that affects teams. And then the other positive side also here would be the productivity. I think we're all using it in different capacities, but then what does that actually, like, how should you get started? These are the questions we're going to answer, and what are some of the teams that are being really successful increasing their productivity and building products that allow consumers to do that. So let's kick off. I think we're going to answer the last two stats here with the next slide into what AI actually is. And I think we all have something to share on it. So Jason, I'll have you start, because I think you put some of these points down, and then we'll answer any questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, as a product person, and probably all of us here probably believe very deeply that you should start with the problem, not the solution. And I think that is, I mean, that even before AI, that was a thing. Like we shouldn't, but whatever the technology, blockchains and stuff before, you probably shouldn't put that in if you were starting with blockchain and trying to retrofit a solution to it. You should always optimize for the thing that you're trying to solve. But I think that what I see out there, out and about there, I mean, there's obviously, I mean, AI, for example, let's just, like kind of define it, I guess. We're talking these days a lot about generative AI, which is, the hot topic, and LLMs, and the kind of diffusion models that do the graphics and stuff like that. These are all fantastic tools, and there's kind of two ways that people generally have been using those. But there's also then the previous waves of AI, which are natural language processing and other stuff that was going on. And I know there's some stuff coming up later on about kind of personalization, which I won't preempt, but like personalization has been going on for years. So like, you don't have to use these new AIs for the old stuff, but it's all about picking the right tool to solve the actual problem, rather than just, as I see some people doing, sort of saying, right, okay, I think I saw like a meme the other day on one social media, another was like, we've just invented a new kind of robot that's like constantly confused and wrong all the time. And the CEO is like, yeah, let's put it in everything. And it's like, yeah, sure. Like there's a time and a place, and you've got to understand. But like there's this two kind of ways that people are using it, obviously, which are somewhat interlinked. One of which is there are a lot of PMs, a lot of product people, a lot of obviously techies and engineers, and I include myself in that number, that are just using it on a day-to-day basis, like using these tools directly to do things better or more quickly than I could before. So as a consultant, I obviously deal with a bunch of different types of companies. And whilst I would never put any of their secrets into one of these things, if I'm trying to do some general sort of landscape analysis, or try and get a bit of information about the company, or maybe just try and toss a few scenarios back and forth with myself, obviously I could do that myself manually. But these days I can just like put some stuff in and start kind of having a conversation with the entire knowledge base of humanity, and hopefully sometimes it'll be correct, and sometimes it won't. But like stuff like that is a super turbocharge, and obviously people are using it for things like kind of summarizing conversations and summarizing feedback, and there are tools that help with that as well. But like you can obviously try and use these tools themselves. I think the thing for me is, of course, on the other side, you've actually got companies that are then trying to harness this and make tools that do that, and like actually building their own SaaS businesses off the back of it. So there's people like Chat PRD, which is a very popular tool these days with product managers, which is serving, I've got the stats actually, like something like 7 or 10,000 users that are currently using now. 10,000, you're going to guess, product managers or product related people that are using this to sort of speed up their sort of requirements writing. And that you've got tools like Craftful, which are basically enabling people to synthesize as much of this feedback as possible that they get from all these different sources. I think they've got something like 40,000 product teams using that at the moment. Just imagine the number of hours that these people are saving. And that's amazing. Like, we should do that. Sometimes people say, is this going to be like the death of product managers, or the death of developers and all of that? And it's like, probably not. Because if your only job was to just write stuff down like that, or read through people's feedback and, like have 2 minutes at the end to think about it, like, well, as long as we're moving from there to there, then this is a fantastic thing to be happening.
Great. Ian, anything?
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to build off of that, I think one of the really important aspects to understand is that all of these models are built off of data, right? And thinking about your organization and what data you have that you could use to perhaps feed into these models, do some additional training and fine tuning. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and a lot of opportunity. And so it's definitely something I would just like keep in mind and think about, like, okay, what can we capitalize on, and what data could we leverage to feed into these models, and how would you go about doing that? Again, as Jason mentioned, there's multiple companies that are building out tools to make that process easier. If you're more technical, there's APIs that are very approachable now to be able to feed in and do some of these the fine tuning of models. Definitely something to explore.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we also like touched base on just like the trust. And I think that goes back into the strategy that still needs to be there. So you can't fully trust everything, not in a bad way. It could be more of like, this is helping me do this, but the being strategic and sticking to your core activities still matter. And do you guys, like on the swarming side, like see that with your, like even with your internal team, and when you're working with like your different clients, of how you manage, like, okay, yes, we have these new tools we could be using, but there's a balance.
Yeah, I would say, we're often, especially, in the last few years, clients or new prospects would come to us and say, what is your AI strategy? And we kept going back to this. AI is part of our toolkit, but AI itself is not a strategy. It's super powerful. You need to embrace it, and we'll get to that here shortly. And we're excited about the potential and what Ian had shared specifically in our business. We quite literally build websites, and so data is crucial as part of that. But we really like to stay focused on, okay, what is the problem we're trying to solve? So if someone comes in the room and says, hey, what if we used AI to do X, Y, or Z? Really focusing back to say, that's great, but what's the problem we're trying to solve? Because AI is not going to, is not the strategy component. And again, it's part of your toolkit. So I think, in your day to day, depending on what that is, regardless of what business it is, I think just keeping the team focused on what is the business, or, what is the business objective or trying to solve, who is the audience, and then saying, great, now how can we use AI to solve that problem is a really good tactic just to keep everyone focused, because AI is such a broad topic, and it can go into a million one directions. I'm sure everyone feels that way as well.
Yeah, that's a good example, because it's like a little bit like you're saying, like, what is your strategy on AI? And like you're expected to be like having this grand plan, but sometimes it's like we will do something with AI if it makes sense, if it's solving a problem
Exactly.
that is useful. So yeah, that's really good. Okay, so we'll dive into some deeper examples here. And this is I liked when you guys put together this slide of like, where do you start? Because I think there's so much out there. So yeah, who on the team, either or, could kick it off from swarming?
Yeah, I'll just start high level. So I think, right, where do you start? I feel like everyone who's joining this call is likely already started, right? Some of the examples that Jason was just sharing, we tend to use, for example, like the chat GBTs for prompts or looking for sort of ideation. But I think, when we're talking specifically about potentially your business or your industry, these are just some platform examples. We have some tool examples as well. But where do you start? Focus on what's already in your toolkit. There's a lot of really powerful companies that you're probably using on a day-to-day basis, whether it's Shopify, whether it's Adobe, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever it might be. These are really powerful tools that have already spent a lot of money focused on AI. So where do I start? I'd start with my toolkit before I would add anything else to my toolkit. So just a few examples here, and then we'll actually bring up one specific that we used for a client. But Shopify and Adobe, similar products that they're working on in related to AI is sort of related products. If they know who you are, what you typically like to buy, what size you wear, right? What season it is, what potentially, why you're potentially buying, whether it's in apparel, shoes, whatever it might be, really helping AI to sort of narrow down those options. So that's been fantastic. And that's something, if you use two of these platforms, and again, you can insert platform here, a lot of them are focused on this, taking advantage of something that they are already putting out there. We had a client on Shopify, a leader in the pet food industry. They're on Shopify. They also had a headless CMS, and something we used as part of their new website build was, people are very passionate about their pets, right? Whether it's dogs, cats, insert pet here. And people didn't want to know that their food that they made can literally be for any type of breed. They make it with the best ingredients, so on and so forth, but people don't want to hear that. They want to know, what is the best food for my Rottweiler? What is the best food for my Shih Tzu, whatever it might be. And so what we did was we used AI from a content perspective, but also from code and technical SEO implementation to really tailor content and structure navigation and blog specific content around breed specific food. At the end of the day, it is the same food for every single breed, but we were able to use AI to help us generate what would be a lot of content, what would be a lot of keywords, a lot of metadata, so on and so forth. So that way people really felt like when they were looking for the best food for their cat or dog, that we were talking to them. So we were able to Jason's point, save time, but also too, just really tailoring it to the audience. So that was a really successful example. And we feel like people, feel like we hear that when they say, what is the best food for your lab?
Yeah,
I'll let Ian
chime
in on some other examples as well, please.
Yeah, good points, Germain. Yeah, I think your point on leveraging the tools and seeing what those how those companies are investing into AI and how they're leveraging it. I feel like you've seen a lot of these companies just like hastily bolt on capability. It's like it's really easy to say, hey, generate a product description or something like that. They're just kind of like probably just like quick add-ons that they're doing. But then there's a lot of investment, for example, seeing an Adobe, both in generative, but for example, I think that their tool to help automate customer journey automation is really interesting, and they have a wealth of data that they can draw on in their platform. And so I think just being kind of aware of like the companies you're already working with or in your space and how they are investing into the technology and actually leveraging it. Some will execute well, some not as well, right? And so I think that's just where you just have to put the time in to kind of understand like how they are adapting the technology. And yeah, because your competitors are going to be doing the same thing and trying to leverage this. So yeah, just stay current with that and make sure that you're kind of along for the ride, so to speak, in those things. And hopefully, an early adopter, but not too early.
I think one of the things about staying current, though, which is really interesting, is like, absolutely, we should, of course, like, again, talking about it from a kind of a product development and product strategy perspective, you always want to know like what you can do, right? It's essential. But I think that, going back to the idea of some of those product recommendations, right? Like you almost certainly don't need an LLM to do product recommendations, right? Like we've been doing product recommendations for 10, 15 years, like relatively straightforwardly with other techniques. And I guess the most important thing, going back to that kind of problem first thing, is not to do what some people seem to be doing, which is like, oh, hey, well, we've got our kind of chat GPT-4 API key now, so now let's just try and use that to do everything, because we all know that there are limitations to these things, and that's fine. Everything has limitations. It's just about having or using the right tool for the job. So kind of staying current is essential, but also being aware of what came before is also essential, because like if your first introduction to AI, for example, any kind of, or just machine learning techniques in general, like if this is your first like exposure to it, then you're probably going to just see everything as the same sort of LLM shaped hammer, which is going to just like do everything. But I do think that it's essential for PMs and obviously for developers and for data scientists and data engineers, all of the people that get involved in this stuff, to make sure that they're not just focusing on the new thing, but they're using tried and tested techniques where they actually deliver better results.
I think that's a good point. You see a lot of these kind of startups popping up. They're essentially just wrappers for OpenAI, and they're trying to make a quick buck. To really deliver a product that's providing a lot of value, it takes a lot of work to really make sure that you're developing models, the strategies, all of the disciplines that come into play there. And so don't just get sold a bill of goods and be like, yeah, that sounds great.
But also, where's the moat, right? Like, where's the moat in that situation? If you're sitting there saying, right, there's 25 companies all using ChatGPT-4, or the new one, was it 4.0? Like, brilliant, great. You go and use those, and you absolutely should. There's plenty of things that you can use it for. But like, if that's your entire business, like we've already seen a bunch of startups complaining that like the latest ChatGPT release like killed their startup, right? Because they're sitting there saying, oh, well, now ChatGPT does the thing that I was doing. Like now ChatGPT can read PDFs. So now my PDF reading ChatGPT company, which just kind of extracted the text and sent it to ChatGPT, is now completely, pointless. So like, I agree, like definitely use them and bring them in as part of your suite, but don't rely on things that anyone can do. The need for kind of a strategic moat is as essential as ever, whatever you're using in the background.
Yep.
Okay, so who wants to kick off with Adobe and Magento?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit more about Adobe. I had mentioned before, so for those that aren't familiar, Magento was acquired by Adobe a few years ago, and Adobe has been investing really heavily into the platform. And one of their primary focuses has been around development of their AI technology, Adobe Sensei, and integrating that into not only the commerce portion, but marketing, analytics, entire kind of ecosystem of Adobe. So I think it's definitely an interesting, Adobe's, I think everybody's heard of them and aware of what they do, but they really excel in creative element and figuring out how to like produce experiences and content and help creators. And I think it's just a really good marriage of kind of what they're doing there and bringing that into the commerce area. So like was already mentioned, product recommendations. That's kind of an obvious one there. Journey automation, and really, again, creating not just only the technology, but the interfaces that make it approachable for somebody that's a little bit less technical to be able to integrate these technologies into the experiences. So, if you're to compare kind of what they're doing and where they're at compared to, like, for example, like a Shopify, like Adobe's a pretty compelling, just the investment that they're making and the commitment they have to it. So we're particularly excited about it at Swarming. We've been working with Magento for a long time, and seeing Adobe kind of take it to the next level is really great.
Yeah. From a marketing perspective, right? We've all been there. You're on your phone or whatever it might be. You're on a site. I want this. They don't have it. It's out of stock. Whatever that company does next is sort of like a defining moment of whether or not you stay as a customer or not. So all these companies are trying to, rightfully so, use AI to say, how can we make sure that we really understand that purchase journey? Did they not purchase because we didn't have their size, because it wasn't the material they wanted, or sometimes, right, you purchase and then you continue to get sort of targeted. And so really, it's been fascinating for both Shopify and Adobe Commerce. They're trying to figure out the purchase journey. At the end of the day, whatever product you might be selling, whether it's quite literally a consumer good, or whether or not you're selling a software tool, whatever it might be, you want someone to purchase it, right? And so really using AI to say, how can we make purchases more seamless, and we're focused on the right people who are going to buy our products.
I think another fascinating thing, Joy, just to bookend that, is that there's a couple of things that spring to mind from that. One of which is from my own experience in limited experience, much less experience in e-commerce than YouTube, but certainly when it comes to, for example, if we think about tools like Craftful, which basically enable you to aggregate large amounts of data or to investigate large amounts of feedback, qualitative data all at once. Like, imagine that for product reviews as well. I know you've done some work with things with people like Yotpo and stuff as well, like that. So I'm sure they're all heavily investing in trying to get as much insight out of large scale product reviews as possible, because again, it's almost just the same use case as getting product feedback. But I'm also, as you was talking about how you kind of optimize journeys and stuff, I'm starting to think about the as yet unfulfilled promise of tech, like the Rabbit R1, like that little orange clicker thing that got completely slated and they're now trying to sell. But this idea of the large action model, which is trying to somehow train computers to go off and just do stuff and find things for you. So you sit there and say, well, whatever, I want a 6-pack of Guinness beer glasses or something like that, and the shop that I normally go to doesn't have that thing, and it's going to go off and it's going to find those elsewhere and get you the best price and bring back some reviews or whatever, or leave out certain types of company that maybe aren't, haven't got good seller feedback or whatever. And who knows whether that'll actually ever work, because it's not the most trivial of problems, and it's also not necessarily things like LLMs are the best at. But it's definitely a fascinating idea that you can almost send out your own concierge to go out there and find the things for you and kind of check out what does have the best feedback, and maybe you give it a bit of information about what you want, like what you value, and it goes and finds the thing that matches you perfectly. So, I mean, who knows? It's all to play for, I guess, but I don't think it started very well, sadly.
Yeah, we have been designing interfaces for humans, and a little bit with crawlers and bots, but I think more and more you're going to see designing for robots to consume your data, right?
And I think we also throughout, just as I mentioned, a lot of different tools, but there are some specific ones that the team has listed here. So we're about how they're using AI in a good, unique way. So yeah.
Yes, I'll just start with this sort of quick. So just from a marketing perspective, reviews are everything. And I love reviews because we're in this era, we already know, right? We're in this era of influencing. It's been around for forever, right? When we think about it, if your friend or your family member, whatever it might have been, recommended something to you, you took their word, so on and so forth. And we've really just seen that evolve nowadays, right? To Instagram, TikTok. And a lot of that boils down to reviews. They are reviewing a product and saying that they trust it. So to us at Swarming, but for you guys in your day-to-day roles, I mean, reviews are so important. So whether or not you're using Yahoo or even Reddit, Reddit is huge. Reddit is using AI to gather and scrap data so that way Google can use it. I think this is going to be really powerful because we need to know, right, what consumers or the people, the end users that are using your product are saying, and they're offering real-time feedback. These are people who are actually using it. These are people who have mass influence to say, yes, I like this product. And so sort of what is that journey of, if they say they like it to one person, that person then tells 7 people, so on and so forth. So really, I would encourage anyone who is on this call, when we think about your product, again, whether you use Yahoo or it's Reddit or whatever else it might be, how are those tools using AI and how can you take advantage of them? I would actually start here, just knowing how powerful when we say the word review, what that really means. So, Yahoo, for example, that's one of the tools that we typically use for e-commerce platforms and e-commerce websites, but they're doing a lot to say, when is the right time to send a review, using data and aggregating data to say, this is the optimal time that someone's likely to review your product. What is the incentives that this person needs in order to leave a review? I am married to someone who will leave a review immediately. I am someone who it takes time, but I understand that the power that those have. So, just we're seeing the power of having like a Yahoo, have all that aggregate data and being able to say, hey, so-and-so, this is the right time. Please, go ahead and send them the email to say, hey, you email or if you leave a product review, we'll give you, free shipping or whatever else it might be. Just really, really powerful in the world that we live in nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like if you're going to, it's really hard enough to, like you said, like everyone has different behavior timelines of when they want to act on something. But if you could use like different data that's available to you, and then it's kind of like, again, we go back to it being AI being a tool to then help you to get more reviews or to be more strategic about it. Yeah, it's a win situation.
Yes, absolutely. And the one last comment I'll make about Reddit, just because that's really important. If you've used Google search recently, right, you may have seen that Reddit is sort of Reddit threads are prioritized. That's intentional. Google is valuing, consumers' feedback. So whatever your product might be, I actually recommend that you check out the Reddit threads. And, it's really great from a marketing perspective, but like I said, really good feedback. But like I shared, like Google is actually scraping all of that data from Reddit and actually using it to help filter out their results. So again, to Samantha's point, a really great tool to use. Now, what you do with that, that's where the strategy comes into play. But really, really powerful when it comes to reviews.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then the next one we have on says the 2 out of 3.
Jason or Ryan, if you want to take this, I know it's just the thoughts on email marketing in general. I'm very passionate about reviews, and it shows.
just maybe leveraging a little bit off of what you were talking about with Yahoo. I mean, the personalization element. This has been, I think, last 5-10 years, especially in the e-commerce world, it's all about personalization. And now with the advent of some of the latest AI, it's almost kind of we're going towards this world like hyper personalization, right? Like really tailoring content, not just for like a larger segment, but you can get down to like the individual and really, really fine tune that. Perhaps some people don't like that as much, but from a marketer standpoint, that just introduces a lot of capability and tools. And Klaviyo is another one of those that's investing a lot into this, just to help you understand your customer more by feeding in data from their system, from the commerce platform, various data points, and just getting a better view. Because I think that's one of the things too, is seeing a lot of companies struggle with just a sea of data, right? So it's like, great, like we can now capture 1 million data points, but what organization has a full-time data analyst? It's not scalable, right? And I think that's one of the promises. I think it was like some of these latest advancements, like, okay, we finally have a tool to actually navigate through just this absolute sea of data and take action from it. So for me, that's kind of what I see in some of these companies like Klaviyo and stuff like that. Okay, how can we provide interfaces to make this actually approachable and truly scale the human effort, right? Just by having these assistants. So yeah.
I think that scaling human effort thing is really important. And obviously we talked earlier about the fact that, you know, we can use these tools to turbocharge, and I fundamentally agree, and I do. And it's the same with kind of pumping out text, or, you know, and analyzing data, which I know that some people advocate for, and also for writing code, which obviously is something also that it's, you know, actually not bad at, as it turns out. In all of these circumstances, though, it can sometimes sort of shank the ball, right? And it just goes straight over the fence into next door's garden, because like it, you know, it just gets it completely wrong. So, and that's just almost like again, talking specifically about things like LLMs, like that's just a kind of core feature or design element of how they work, and like you just need to understand that. So if I'm sitting there and, yeah, as someone that knows data and knows development and knows, you know, what I'm, you know, knows English, for example, I can look at the outputs of these things and I can sit there and say, okay, yeah, cool, like let's dig into that a bit more, let's check that or whatever. Like, but would I currently sort of just turn it on and say go for it and just wait and see what came out of it and what decisions it made for me? Absolutely not. Would I put someone that has no knowledge of data at all in front of some analysis that's been kind of pumped out the back of an LLM? Probably not, because they wouldn't know if it was wrong or not. And this is the kind of the paradox of LLMs, is like if you already, like, if you know how to do it already, then it's then like you might not have needed it. But if you don't know how to do it already, then you have no idea if it was telling the truth. So trying to use it where you can to, for example, speed up data analysis and, you know, be able to have some kind of observability over what it was doing and how it came to the outputs that it did, rather than, you know, firing all your data analysts and then just saying, okay, ChatGPT can do it now. So I think there's an incredible amount that we can do to get, again, summarizing feedback, summarizing reviews, trying to work out what main areas are coming up, what areas I now want to go and talk about or go and investigate with my team. 100%, we should be doing that. Like we should be doing that today. Everyone should be doing that today. But I do see some relatively optimistic people out there sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, we don't need any of these people anymore. We just, you know, we just trust the machine." And yeah, I don't think we're there yet. And arguably with LLMs, we're never going to be there, and that's just a part of it. And we just have to accept and embrace that.
Yeah, I like what was said earlier about the data. And I think that's like where a lot of help is like needed as individuals that are like working. Like sometimes you have data that's coming and stored into different platforms, and bringing that in together to actually make an informed decision, like an automated email marketing system, to understand that, okay, you have all of this different user behavior in product, then also how they're interacting with like marketing material, even like with customer success, and like how could you use all of that to be more strategic in your communication to them, whether it is getting them to use your product more, to see you as an indispensable tool, and when the time coming up to renewal or to keeping you on, etc. So like tackling it from all those angles. And I think that's something like data is what AI, like we're going back to in each point, is really helping us like sift through that a little bit better.
Yeah. And one other comment there, if there would be one thing, exactly what you're saying, Sam, just to piggyback off of that, if whatever that product is you're selling, the one thing I would use AI today on to make sure that you knew is like, what is that average, you know, I think Claudio said it's here, but like the future value of the customer, what is that average lifetime customer value is critical. If you, I'm just going to use a company in the US that's being brought up often right now, Peloton, and they, you know, it's an expensive, folks are familiar with Peloton, they sell at-home exercise equipment. And so they're in an interesting place right now because they pumped a lot of money into the company, not knowing that if you purchased your bike, your stationary bike, you likely are not going to purchase another one for a very long time. You may add a treadmill, you may add something else, but, you know, really focusing on, okay, you know, when is that person going to purchase? When they purchase, are they going to be purchasing every 3 weeks? Are they going to be purchasing years from now? Whatever else that might be, because then that dictates how often you talk to them, right? From a marketing communication standpoint, how often do you reach out to them for reviews, so on and so forth. So using AI to aggregate that data to say, you know, how often is this person on average purchasing, right? There's always going to be the exceptions on either side, but that's so powerful to make sure that that person stays your customer for a lifetime.
Exactly. And we could even have a whole webinar about like how with Peloton and like the soul cycle
Oh my
in
gosh,
US and what happened during the pandemic and how their strategies changed another time because I'm a bike lover as well.
Yes.
But let's go on to our last example on user snap. But of course, I am on the team with User Snap, so I could share some things, but I want to hear from Swarming. Like, you guys could either share like what you're loving about using Snap, why you use us, maybe simple, and then I could shed some light on some of the cool things we're working on.
Of course. Do you want to start or you want us to start?
You guys could start, yeah.
Hey, you got it. Yes. So this is going to sound like shameless plugs. Bear with us. So, right, Swarming, we build websites, to put it simply. And so, what's really important to us is when, before we, of course, launch a website, is that our client not only loves it, but it functions exactly how we want across every browser type you could possibly imagine. And so, UserSnap's been a really fantastic tool for us for a variety of different reasons. But it makes sure that we're like, okay, client, the website is ready for you to review, and it provides visualization tools and two-way feedback comments just to make sure that everything is being captured. We've been really impressed with UserSnap, especially as it relates to AI, because it's just exactly what we're talking about here, right? It expedites things. They're using their tool to to sort of scrap the data, to look at the comments and say, here is a common thread. This one comment was duplicated 5 times. It's just really streamlining processes and making sure more than anything that we don't miss anything. I think that's extremely critical to us. So yeah, we've been fortunate enough to use UserSnap for a handful of years now at this point, and it's been remarkable to see the advancement. And then at the end of the day, our clients are like, everything is checked off the box, and right, our goal is to get the site ready for launch and to launch successfully, and we can't do that without UserSnap.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think Jason also mentioned earlier about like not just plugging in features just because
Yep.
you're, everyone's doing AI. And that's kind of like how we were thinking about it. Like, okay, where are our use cases or these particular features that we could help a PM, to expedite their process, or to just like sometimes something simple as when they're replying to users' feedback. We all know we sometimes have a little bit of a write-a blog, like how to actually respond or what you want to say. So then we just simply added as an option, you could have a generated reply that you could edit to your liking, and that gets you started. So that to, automatically, using the labels that you already created, and then having like AI be able to sort out and automatically label that for you. But then you as PMs, again, we're going back to the being strategic. You go in and then you don't have to spend that time on properly sifting through labels. You could just then see, okay, is this right or wrong? And then we're really a two-way communication. Of course, we believe in feedback, and our users will send us like, oh, this wasn't right, or we want to see this improved. And I mean, Germain, you and I had conversations about like what would be really beneficial and what is the North Star to get AI to like within UserSnap, but what you would love to see in the analysis side. So like, I think that like open conversation, we're going back to not just saying, okay, AI is going to replace this for you, here you go. And then when it breaks, you're just like, well, there's no backup option there. And so we've been very like aware of going slower with it, but still offering something when you can, because the technology is available to use. Yes. All right, so we're doing good on time, so we have a few more minutes, and as far as before we get into a little bit of a Q&A, and I always like to make sure we come back to, I guess, our main objective here and takeaway for our audience. As you can see with all the examples, AI is an enhancement, it's not a replacement. We've said that a lot of times, but some of the key takeaways, it's allowing AI to give you back time. You focus on, if you're creating a feature, like focus on creating real value. So again, going back to that problem solving. I loved when Germain said this, it's a co-pilot versus a pilot. Use it as that. And then also using the, like where you want to start, like using your toolkit and seeing what the tools that you already love and are familiar with, what are they using with AI, and then familiarize yourself with that as well. So it's anyone want to add anything that I've missed before, or last points?
I think we can't underestimate, though. Obviously, I agree with all of these things, but we can't underestimate the power of hype, which is underpinning some of the decision making behind this. So, for example, I've read something somewhere that a bunch of VCs are like, they're only investing in AI companies at the moment. Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily even matter if the companies, I mean, I'm sure they're doing some due diligence, but like, if they were solving them with a room full of people, would they invest in those companies, or is it literally just because they're kind of cresting the wave and they're, you know, kind of, you know, kind of going along with the rest of the AI crowd? Like, that's important, because if you're looking for investment, like, maybe you need to have, you know, be able to tell a compelling story. No matter how much that disappoints me, doesn't change the facts on the ground, right? So I think having an answer to the question, like, the, you know, talked earlier about how AI isn't a strategy, yeah, sure, but like, at the same time, if you're going to get asked about it in every single conversation, you probably need to have an answer for that question. And if you're not using it for whatever, then you're probably going to need to have quite a compelling answer as to why what you're doing is better. And I think also there's a lot of boards out there, even post fundraising, that are sort of sitting there, you know, and I've definitely been in this conversation before, where like someone comes up to you, or you know, the board, someone from the board has a word in the CEO's ear, and they're like, right, we need some AI features now. And obviously you sit there and go, well, yeah, of course, if we listen to all the things we just said, that's not the way to do it. But it doesn't change the reality of the fact that the kind of the puppet masters of the company are there, kind of expecting some kind of satisfaction out of it. So having a really compelling answer to that question, even if you do want to do it the right way around, I think it's important. You can't, you know, you almost need to prime yourself to answer that question, rather than being caught on the hop when it comes up.
Yep, I love that. That's
Yeah.
a good last thing to end with for the discussion, and before we go into Q&A now. Okay, so I think this one anyone could answer, but maybe Jason is probably more geared towards you. But again, anyone could answer it or give your thoughts. So how much would you say one needs to know about the technology of AI to be an AI PM? Because this is a new trend, I think, that's coming around this definition, the title.
So if I think back in old money, before the new wave of AI, when I was working on some at the very least sort of machine learning based products that you know, they very much, it was all natural language processing and predictions of trends and stuff like that. Like, fantastic stuff, super interesting. Understood a lot of it because I made the effort to. Now, as a former developer, it's easier for me to understand some of the technical, not all of, but some of the technical nuts and bolts, because, you know, I'm kind of from that world. So I could understand the main thrust of it. And I certainly read a couple of books on general data and machine learning principles. Now, I am not a machine learning or AI engineer. I never have been. I never will be. I also fundamentally believe that the serious craft of product management, you know, going out and building a winning product, should not rely too much on you being an expert in these things. You need to be aware of what's going on, the kind of the boundaries, and you need to be able to explain these things to people. Like, you need to explain how things work, you know, to your customers, you know, to the market. But do I want someone going out and, like, you know, getting, you know, doing a Udemy course on AI and then coming back and starting to tell all their developers and data scientists what to do? Absolutely not. Like, you hire good engineers and good data people, good data science people to come and do this stuff with you, not for you, but with you. So you need to know enough to have a good conversation, but I would never say that you need to be like a deep expert or need to be able to start building the models yourself. You can if you want, but I don't think it's essential.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, just say too, you know, it's an exciting time too, that, you know, this is a new technology, opens up a lot of opportunities, most of which have not been explored yet. And so, yeah, you don't, like, to Jason's point, you don't need to be an expert in how these models work and all of that. To your level of interest, you know, diving into that and read about that, it's certainly not going to hurt. But I just recommend people just to use the tools in creative ways. Think of it as this new type of paintbrush that you can make things that you couldn't before. Use it in your personal life in creative ways. I think, you know, it's really interesting talking to people and hearing their different stories and like how they used it for whatever aspect, not just in their professional life, but personally, you know. There's a lot of interesting applications that will just give you the experience, give you the exposure, and yeah, just to keep that open mind.
Yeah.
It's very new for everybody.
Yeah, keep the curiosity. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, this next question could be for anyone. So do you suggest to AI to help with testing the concept of new product ideas by feeding your user personas and behaviors data. So I repeat again, like, do you suggest AI to help with testing the concept of new product ideas? So
if anyone else wants to go first, I
Yeah,
have a couple
I
of
think my
opinions.
hesitation there is like, what data exactly is that AI using and in its analysis to give you its feedback, right? Perhaps some good insights can come back from that, but my initial reaction is like, I don't think it's a replacement by any means for doing the real work. Unless you have
question
a,
is,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the simple question is, who's buying the product? Like, who are you selling the product to? Are you selling it to a bunch of AI bots, or are you selling it to actual human beings? And for now, we're still selling it to actual human beings, right? So like the people, what I'm happy to spitball with chatbots all day long to try and work out different approaches and kind of test my own assumptions. But would I then go and build a product off of that? There's been a lot of talk about sort of synthetic research. I think to me, currently, it sounds like the worst idea in the world, because we all know that these things hallucinate, and that's part of the package. That's fine. Like we can price that into our research that we do kind of internally, our own desk research. But would I go out and interview like thousands of synthetic bot respondents and then build a product for them? Only if they were the ones that were buying it.
Yeah, they're certainly not human actors, and I haven't seen one of them, demonstrate empathy for their human traits. Right? Yeah.
But it's tempting though, right? Because people just look at it and they go, well, we can speed everything up. And it's like, yeah, sure, you can speed everything up. And there are lots of things that you can legitimately speed up, and you should speed up. Like, no one should not be using these tools for anything. Like, everyone should be using these tools for something. I just think that, I mean, I guess you could sit there and say, well, yeah, fine. It's almost like you can get it to try and play a part, and then maybe you use that as a basis to go and experiment with something else that you would experiment with real users. Maybe it can help you sort down to a smaller list of things that you could try. I'm just very, very wary of like getting something that you're not building your tools for to help you make decisions about the tools that you should be building. Like, again, the ultimate truth at the moment is someone is buying these, or subscribing to your tools, and that person is not an AI bot.
Yeah, right. With product, mitigating risk. And so how would you mitigate risk is making sure that exactly what Jason and I are saying, right? Making sure that the people who are testing the products are the ones who would be purchasing it. But it goes back to quality versus quantity too, right? The quickness is appealing, but really spending the time is going to pay off for you in the long run.
Yeah. Are there any tools that you guys are using professionally or personally that you find yourself using like on a daily or weekly basis? Like they are related. I mean, you guys spoke about it, Swamming, a bit earlier about the Adobe and being able to utilize their features. So that I'm sure that's something you guys are using all the time, but just more of a fun question.
Yeah, I can first go to that. I'm technical, right? So definitely leveraging tools like GitHub Copilot. One to help with development. One tool I really like, in this world of these LMOs are really good at generating code and helping assist in the development process, which opens up possibilities of even further of rapid prototyping. Right, this might not be production ready code, but I'm trying to get an idea across quickly and develop out a prototype. So I use a tool called Replit. If you're familiar with that, basically a fully integrated development environment you can run online in your browser, but has really great integration into AI. So you can quickly spin up a new concept, generate code with assisted AI, and deploy out a prototype solution in extremely short amount of time. It's really incredible tool. So I use that almost daily at this point.
Awesome.
Yeah, I write ChatGPT. It feels like a easy one to say, but definitely use ChatGPT. Often, I would say another one too, just from an SEO perspective, Writerly, that is a SEO AI tool that we work with quite frequently. Again, more for idea generation more than anything. It can source a lot of data of what your competitors are using from an SEO perspective and what you need to say and not say. So that's been really powerful as well. And then, yes, as I mentioned before, a lot of the tools that we're working with and just taking advantage of what they have, including HubSpot's been a big one too, just big, powerful. HubSpot has so many offerings, right, as part of their marketing, sales hub, so on and so forth, their CRM basis. So that's been incredible to see the work they've done on AI as well.
Yeah.
I'm currently keeping it simple, so I'm kind of bouncing in between ChatGPT and Claude. I don't really have a strong reason to do either of those two things. I just sometimes go to one and sometimes go to the other. Sometimes I'll use them separately to, or at the same time and ask the same questions of both just to see, just to see which one gives me the best results. To be honest, I think, I kind of like Claude. I haven't started paying for it yet, whereas ChatGPT I have a license for. I also use it to generate images for presentations as well. So like all of my presentations have got loads of lovely comedic images now that I didn't have to pay for, well, aside from the ChatGPT license. So that's always a fun one. I'm also, for searching, I'm quite often using Perplexity these days, which I think is quite popular because it kind of combines LLMs with kind of referenced links to some of the content as well. So like you can actually go and see where it got that information from most of the time, rather than it being kind of part of a black box. In fact, I was watching a stupid example, but I was watching a YouTube clip earlier of like one of the Lord of the Rings films, and I started asking Perplexity questions about why it didn't do this other thing, like why the character didn't do this thing or that thing, and it actually came back with some pretty good answers about why didn't Elrond didn't kill the guy who didn't throw the ring in the thing and stuff like that. So like just fun stuff like that. But so Perplexity, I think I'm starting to get a bit fed up with Google, I guess, not because of of the company itself or the fact that it's not still doing quite a good job, but like quite often, like a lot of the questions that I want to ask that aren't me searching for a product are much more exploratory questions. So starting to use something where I don't have to go and find 20 articles about a thing and then sort of pick through it, but actually use something like Perplexity to go and find the things and give me kind of a references to them, but also kind of map it all out, and you can kind of ask follow-ups and stuff like that. That's pretty cool as well. And I do still use ChatGPT for the occasional bit of kind of coding or sort of scripting advice or whatever, but I try and steer clear of that as much as possible, simply because I've long since stopped being a developer, and I should probably have my development environment taken away from me by now.
Awesome. Okay, we just have like a few minutes left, so I'll we'll ask just these two more here. Someone is asking, oh, the replay will be available by Monday. I'm expecting hopefully tomorrow, but I'll try to post it no later than Monday. And okay, so this goes for anyone. Were there any changes you observed with user browsing and purchase behavior since the boom of AI? It's a good question. Like personally, or just like with your clients or anything as well.
Like in terms of data you have access to, or how you're using the data?
I would say like how you're using the data.
That sounds like a question. Maybe it was also, sorry, alluding to like maybe like changes in behavior that we're seeing
Yes.
as well, right? And from actual visitors and sites, I don't think I've seen, or had access to data to be able to see that directly. But I think that, just seeing what Google is doing to try to incorporate AI, people are obviously expecting. Jason, you had noted like using different tools, maybe then maybe just deferring to Google as well. I mean, that's going to change the landscape dramatically. Like I think we haven't just quite seen the result of that quite yet, but it is coming. Right, how people do their research, whether it's about the purchase or whatever. Yeah, I mean, big changes are coming.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting timing too, right? Because we have more data than we ever have. We've got these AI tools that are scraping the data, looking at it and analyzing it. But then you have a lot of people, right, who are opting in and saying, hey, you can't track me. You can't use my data for X, Y, and Z reasons. And so a lot of loopholes are happening. A lot of companies are, and the US is way different than Europe and so on and so forth. So it's been very interesting, I would say, just keeping a pulse on that. Yes, in terms of how we're using that data, what access we have data to, I think to Ian's point, there's going to be significant changes. Nothing scary, right? It's just adaptation. It's in Swarming's point of view, like things change. Nothing really is all that scary. It's just going to be different. You got to approach it differently. But I think it's going to be very interesting, especially in the next year or so, where it says, okay, we have AI tools, we have all this data, but people won't let us access certain parts of their purchase history or what they're doing online. How does this all come into fruition? And how do you actually use that data to, help, the economy, consumer goods purchasing, so on and so forth. So,
Yep.
very, very interesting times for sure. So we're excited,
Well,
and things keep getting pushed back too. So it changes things. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add on to that. It's like, I think it's going to be really important. Anybody that's, interfacing with Google, for example, you run a website, right? And so much time has been towards like, hey, how can I tailor my content, to adhere to Google's view of the world and how they index, right? That's going to change dramatically, right? With new approaches, people using, AI to basically, help them navigate the sea of information on the web. And that's going to require changes to how people think about how they interface with these AI agents, right? Rather than just like this kind of single entity of Google kind of owning that space. Who knows how that will play out exactly, but you should not have your head buried in the sand.
Yeah.